U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese imports starting next month. In a series of social media posts, Trump also said the U.S. will tighten export controls on critical software, accusing Beijing of becoming very hostile after China announced new restrictions on rare earth exports. Trump also warned he may skip his planned meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, though he later said he still intends to attend the summit in South Korea. And to help us unpack the renewed U.S.-China tension and its possible impact on the Philippines, we have Economist Ronilo Balbieran joining us today. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Ma'am Rachel.
Okay, first of all, paano kaya maapektuhan ng Pilipinas dito sa 100% tariffs on China? It is now, I think, a total of 130% on imports. And yun yung reaction nila to the export controls of China on rare earth materials, which they are the primary source for. So how do you think might this affect the Philippine market?
Most probably, we just have to pray that we continue to enjoy lower tariff rates going to the U.S. Yun lang naman yung usapan. So if we can actually have cheaper imports of these Chinese materials, Chinese elements, etc. And of course, they will manufacture many of those in China. We will assemble it in the Philippines and then export it into the United States. So habang mura yung pagbenta natin sa US, I think we will be in good shape. No? So yun lang ipapanalangin natin. So US, don't increase the tariff rates on semiconductor and electronic products from the Philippines to the United States. As long as we monitor, there was a time that President Trump joked, I'm thinking of putting 100% tariff on electronics of the Philippines going to the United States. So wag naman, no? So wag naman Trump. So as long as we monitor that, and then that will be okay for us.
Kasi alam natin na may, parang he made an issue over the China going through Vietnam,
yes,
right? And kaya mataas ang kanilang tariff. So as long as those don't increase, we'll be fine.
Yes.
Iniisip ko kasi if you take a look at the effect of that on the ASEAN economy, if there are higher tariffs on Chinese imports going to the United States, won't that increase the supply for the ASEAN market, therefore commanding lower prices, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I think you're correct in terms of predicting lower prices for us, especially that the U.S. is the biggest buyer of the world. No? So they are 13% of the total world's imports. So if that particular relationship between the U.S. and China, and considering that U.S. and China are 45% of the entire global GDP, no? So kapag ka na-severe yung relationship na yon, then China has no choice but to look at the ASEAN to sell to us, of course, probably in India and in Africa, but they have no choice but to, still bring it down a little bit further so that we can actually absorb more of these products to our country.
So the ASEAN region stands to gain,
yes,
from this conflict,
definitely,
by the two major superpowers. But do you propose also that we diversify our trade partners, or do we have enough diversification of trade partners amid the, I guess, the superpower rivalry?
Yeah, I think we are, at this point, we are diversified now. So I think no country has dominated our entire export market. No? So U.S. is between 16 to 19% at any given year. No? And then China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and then we have the European market, we have the Australian market, we have the Japanese market. And on top of diversifying our exports of goods, we have actually diversified our total trade exports. No? So we have actually increased our export of services. So for the first time, actually in 2024, the export of service has actually overtaken the export of goods.
Oh,
so that shows to us that the Filipinos are actually trying to evolve, no, since 5 years ago in terms of this fierce competition in the export of goods, because you're dealing with global prices and operational efficiency. But if you shift towards exports of services, then there's actually more fight for the Filipinos. If we're talking
We have,
about
more
creativity,
leverage.
innovation,
Correct.
arts, crafts, etc.
And sabi nga, no, yung pagdating naman sa goods, no, baka we can hold our bananas pagka tinaasan yung tariffs natin ng US.
Yes. May kakaiba yata sa mga bananas ng Pilipinas.
And speaking of the local markets, there's been a lot of talk lately on how much this flood control probe has affected the stock market. What are the real numbers here? The PSE has called out over the weekend the preposterous claims that the local market has lost up to 5 trillion pesos in market capitalization. Tapos yung sinabi pa ni Secretary or ni Chairman Lim of the SEC, now yung 1.7 trillion daw yung nawala sa market cap. Ano po ba talaga nakikita nyo dito?
Well, these are perceptions. No? So, there are two things in terms of value. There's perceived value and the intrinsic value. As far as our economy is concerned, I think the fundamentals are there. No? So, despite all these things that are happening, our second quarter of growth of GDP clocked in at 5.5%, which is second highest in Southeast Asia. No? So, meaning we are really growing our economy despite of this that is happening. No? So, because government is just 15% of our economy, and flood control is just a minor portion of the total national budget. We're talking about more than 6 trillion worth of budget, and flood control is roughly around 300 billion. And we're talking about, for example, 2025, of around 30 trillion worth of GDP for 2025 for the Philippines. No, so if you have, for example, a 300 billion, in-slash na nila for 2026. No? So, but if we're talking about 2025, na 300 billion, for example, of flood control projects, divided by 30 trillion, that's just 1% of our economy.
You're talking about infrastructure spending.
Yes, on the flood control. So, so we have to put this into a context of relative values as far as the impact on our economy and the stock market is concerned. Of course.
So that's just 1%.
Yes.
So you don't see that affecting growth targets for 2025.
Yes. So because it's 5.5. The government has actually initially targeted since 2023 a target of 6.5 to 8%. But as of July, they have actually decreased it to 5.5. So all of these things have actually been priced in terms of our lower growth performance for this year at 5.5.
But talking about market capitalization, ito yung perception nga that investors have on
Yes.
our economy.
Yes.
Doesn't this widespread corruption affect investor confidence and therefore yung pagpasok nila sa ating mga markets?
I think yung part na yan, very minor at this point. No? So nakikita ko with all the investigations from the House, from the Senate, and from the Independent Commission, ibig sabihin, medyo contained mo in terms of we're doing something about it. Now, everybody's waiting for the immediate results of who's gonna go to jail. No? So, siguro pag may nasample na isa, then that actually, in a way, wipes out these jitters in terms of our government is still in control.
Pag may result?
Yes, pag may result.
Pag wala, do you forecast a continued slowdown?
Pag nawalan ng result, your baseline is at 5%. No? So, you are missing the 0.5%. Now, that means you will have to double check it with our net additional income from abroad. Why? Because our OFW remittances, the dividends of Filipino companies abroad, it's 15% of GDP. So that has actually been saving us from lackluster performance of foreign direct investments. No? So ibig sabihin, pag yung mga investor, medyo matagal na po, more than 20 years na po silang on and off ang ating mga foreign investors. What has actually cost our economy to survive 5 to 6% for the last 70 years is actually OFW money.
Remittances.
Actually, in the last 20 years, it's remittances. That's why we perform by 6% on the average, any given. So, ang ano niyan is tatamaan ba itong mga OFW nila?
Baka dumami pa yung OFW.
Baka nga dumami pa, no? So in short, mag-aano lang yan. Ang masamang tama lang.
Mag-offset.
ang masamang tama lang yan sa economy natin is yung, well, technically speaking, tama na nagbuhos tayo ng flood control project sa budget for our entire country because we want to preserve the assets of our lower income Filipinos. That was technically sound, supposedly. So, ang tama nun, over the next 5 to 10 years, dahil wala nga pala tayong ginawang flood control, dahil ghost pala. So, meaning, we can still expect that our poor people or lower income Filipino families are still bound to lose their small assets. And so, ang tama niyan sa ating GDP is yung productive capacity natin over long term will actually be hurt. No? So, instead of us growing at 8, 9, 10%, we're still back with our 70-year average
If the
of 5%.
corruption continues.
If the corruption continues.
So this is actually us spending our money wiser.
Yes. On
So it
productive
will have,
capacity
you
and
predict
protecting
this
the
to have
assets.
a positive impact on the economy long term.
Yes. Long
If
term.
we see results.
Yes, yes. But in the short term, we don't see it going less than 5%. Because actually, ang habang bumabaha tayo, ang Pilipinas bumabaha din sa sobrang pera.
What do you mean by that?
We are swimming with extra cash. Our banking sector is so awash with cash, with more than 3 trillion worth of extra cash in the banking sector. That's why interest rates are so low.
Oo nga, nagbawas nga po, no? Oo
And
nga.
right now, BSP, sabi niya,
And what are the indicators of
4.75.
that we have a lot of cash?
Interest rates are, So,
Yung
money supply
po.
is money demand. Money supply, money demand. Kapag there's money supply, and then it's
Okay.
greater than money demand, then interest rate, which is the price of money, will be lower.
Okay, so
yun
what
yung
would you advise to investors now? I mean, those holding their money,
Alright.
waiting for actual results from the flood control probes?
I've talked to foreign, domestic investors, businessmen. Take your pick, no? So we have a dynamic population. We have a dynamic market. We are awash with cash. Interest rates are very low. So it's really up to their projects, no? So I'm challenging any businessman here in the Philippines, whether foreign or domestic. So it's just a matter of you having a good business idea because it will fly here in the Philippines. So never mind this 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% maximum that the government can do with the corruption and its impact on our economy is at around 5%. But we are growing at 5.5 to 6%, and we keep on receiving this amount of money by a magnitude of 20 to 30% additional money every year.
All of this despite, for example, the U.S. flagging the corruption in the Philippines, kahit may mga ganong advisory?
Yes, because our economy has been domestically driven. No? Domestic consumption yung power ng atin. 76% ng GDP natin, ng annual revenue of our country is driven by family consumption. And that is actually driven by the amount of extra cash we receive every year. So we are actually receiving more than 3.4 trillion pesos from that 30 trillion that we earn in the Philippines. So we earn 30 trillion inside our country. And then we receive more than 10% of additional income. No country in the world has that power.
What sectors are you seeing growth in?
We have seen over the last 3 years, right after the pandemic, tourism, logistics, mga events, mga tinatawag na mga concerts, public performances, etc., etc. And we see over the next 2 to 3 years now that if we can solve our supply of electricity, so we can actually grow our mga utilities, electricity, gas, water, and then over the next 2 to 3 years, as we have reduction in rice prices globally, and then we will be enjoying cheaper rice. Then we will shift our budget. Filipino families will shift their budget into travel, into real estate.
Pero tumataas po yung presyo ng gasolina ngayon at pati na rin yung forex yung prices. Medyo mataas, sa 57 po siya. I mean, isn't that an optimistic forecast for you? yung sinabi po ninyo?
Well, yung sa oil, ano lang naman yan, short term, but I think the OPEC members have declared that they will be actually increasing their production over the next 2 to 3 years. No?
Okay.
Kasi marami na rin silang competitors. Hindi na sila quote-unquote monopoly in the global market. And so that announcement actually now puts our forecast for oil prices at a more or less a relatively predictably flat line towards the next 2 to 3 years.
So we're going to be seeing a better 2026,
Yes,
2027.
yes. Kasi tinan mo itong 2025, the government actually spent negative 8% on infrastructure spending, and still we grew by 5.5%. Had they spent 0%, we would have gone 5.75 to 6%. So, kahit hindi sila gumastos this year, nag-grow tayo, lalo kung gagastusin nila, and they have no choice because the national budget is accumulating. So by 2026, they have no choice but to spend that money, and we will have a higher growth with higher disbursement rate of government, with lower interest rate, lower inflation, and higher exchange rate that will multiply our OFW money, BPO
okay, that's
revenues,
all right.
and making our tourism more competitive because of a higher exchange rate. We will have a 5.5 to 6.5% growth for next year.
I guess that's good news for
Yes.
our investors here looking for growth opportunities. And here's to us hoping the government cleans up its act
Yes, ma'am.
to be able to spur that growth. In the meantime, maraming salamat for joining
Maraming
us
salamat
this
po.
morning and helping us understand what's happening globally and domestically. We have Economist Ronilo Balbieran.